Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys. Sawadee Kap. Nice to see everyone. Welcome to all of you guys that are here, and welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Today is our group learning program where we're going to be starting with meditation to help you guys do a little bit of meditation and learn a little bit of meditation in the way that the Buddha taught. And then I'm going to move into a talk, which is part 2 of a 3-part series that I'm doing. Here at the beginning of our group learning program, we have a 7-month program where I walk students through developing a foundation in the path to enlightenment, and we use this book as our guide. This is Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's volume 1 of the book series, and each Sunday I go chapter by chapter helping students to understand the foundational teachings of how to get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy that is referred to as enlightenment. There's various important benefits and qualities of getting to this enlightened mental state where your mind will no longer experience any discontent feelings any longer, but you need to cultivate the wisdom of how to do that. You can't just meditate your way to enlightenment, but meditation is an important aspect of your journey to enlightenment. So that's why we start with that. So I'm going to guide you guys in a meditation session, and then we're going to move into part 2 of our 3-part series. Part 2 of our 3-part series is titled The Eightfold Path, Moral Conduct. This is where you're going to be learning about the moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path. And this is where you learn more about the natural law of karma, of cause and effect. But first, let's do meditation together. So I'll guide you guys in that, and then we'll move into that talk. So if you'd like to join for meditation, we're going to do breathing mindfulness meditation where you're focused on the breath, and when the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. The way that I start this is I start with chanting. If you guys would like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. There's chanting sheets over there on the table that you guys are welcome to help yourself to, because the chants are in the Pali language and you'll be able to see what it is that we're actually chanting. It's important to note that these chants, there's nothing mystical or magical about them. This isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship or anything like that. It's not prayer or anything like that. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to your memory, that everything he taught was oral. So they used chanting every 2 weeks. They would come together and they would recite his teachings orally in order to commit them to their memory. And then he would help them to be able to learn the teachings, because once you internalize it in the mind and you've memorized it, then you can actually practice the teachings. We don't need to chant in order to memorize the teachings anymore. We have books and audiobooks, podcasts, videos, all these different things, but I still chant because it helps to ease the mind into meditation and you get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to, but just understand it's not a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. In fact, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants, because if you look at the English translation of the chants, there's a lot of gratitude and appreciation and respect for the Buddha in these chants. And the Buddha wouldn't walk around and say, here, chant these things to me so that you can respect me, right? This would be ego, this would be arrogance, and the Buddha would have eliminated that as part of his journey to enlightenment. He wouldn't have taught students to chant these things to him. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to this peace and joy, this mental state that is permanent, you probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that teacher too. Because the Buddha didn't want anything from his students. He didn't expect anything. He didn't ask for anything. So if you learn from a teacher that just out of the kindness of their heart helped you completely eradicate anger and frustration and guilt and shame and fear and all these other discontent feelings to the mind being completely peaceful and joyful permanently, you'd have a lot of respect for that person too. So I think his students created these either during his life or after his death. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance to help you guys understand how to meditate while we're actually meditating. Those of us here at the temple and everyone joining us online will just all be meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and you're just doing the meditation. You're doing the work of the meditation. I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a bird chirping. You might hear a dog barking. You might hear a car or a motorbike go by. But all these sounds are impermanent. You're never going to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. So if your mind isn't craving permanent quietness, then you can maintain your peacefulness. Just know that these sounds are impermanent. They're going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away, and your mind can reside peaceful and joyful in the present moment. After the meditation, we're going to come out of that with some more chanting that you guys are welcome to join along in. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught. They're seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you learn these in different courses and programs that I teach. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to be starting a 5-day course that you guys are invited to attend if you like. It's from Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we take an hour-and-a-half lunch break each day. It's completely free. There's no cost for it. It starts here tomorrow at 9 a.m., where I'm going to be teaching the foundational teachings that it takes to be able to get to enlightenment in a consolidated 4 days. And as part of that, I'm going to be teaching the 4 positions in addition to a lot of other things as well. So you guys are welcome to attend that if you like. But most people are learning in the seated position, either sitting on the floor, in a chair, or on a bench, or on a sofa, maybe a wheelchair or something like this. And you can sit however you're comfortable. There's not just one fixed way to sit. But I'll just give you a little bit of guidance to maybe help you along in finding something that's comfortable for you. Is that if you're on the floor, usually people have some cushions under their rear to kind of soften their seat, and then they lightly cross their legs. If your legs are real tight, this will impede the circulation and could cause pain in the lower body. So you'd like your legs to just be lightly crossed. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets their hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. You need to find what's comfortable for you. So you could really sit however you like, and you can place your hands however you like. Some people like to place them on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. And that's the same thing for anybody in a chair or in the sofa or wheelchair or bench or anything like this. Is some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or cross at the ankles, but you can see I'm sitting in a chair with my legs crossed, so you could sit however you're comfortable. And same thing with the hands and the arms for anybody who might be sitting in a chair. And then with your upper body, you would like this to be erect. By having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll allow you to actively train the mind. It'll keep the mind attentive and alert during your meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back, so the mind can stay attentive and alert, and you can actively train the mind during meditation. And then it also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, because with your sternum up and your shoulders back, you'll be able to more easily breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to chant, which you guys are welcome to join along in, and then I'll come back in with some guidance for you during the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanang Apiwateyami Savakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang สัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวะมานุสรังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatava Panusarang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I come together with students here in order to help you guys gradually learn the teachings of the Buddha. I do this at 9 a.m. from here, and I live stream it and record it so that you guys have access to it even if you can't attend the class. And then I do it at 9 p.m. from home where I also live stream it from there. So no matter where you are in the world, there's a live class available for you in your time zone. And where you can't make the class, there's ability to listen to the recordings either on YouTube or Facebook or our podcast. Today's class is part 2 of our series where I'm having this 3-part series where I'm diving into the details of the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. This is what's going to guide you to enlightenment. You would need to know the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down, in order to be able to get to enlightenment. This is the life practice that you're developing. And last week, I spoke about the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. The wisdom section of the Eightfold Path comprises of right view and right intention. This is where you're kind of establishing a foundation to build all the rest of the path. What we essentially talked about in right view, but you're going to need to learned that in detail in order to be able to really progress to enlightenment is we talked about how the mind is causing its own discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings in others are actually being caused by the mind itself. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, with a lack of wisdom, we will think that other people are causing us to be angry or frustrated or sad. But your mind is actually causing this itself. There's something called craving, desire, attachment. This is the longing, the yearning, the wanting, the expecting. Whereas if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy or excited. It gets pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, things like this. And the way that the teachings of the Buddha are is there's no beliefs in the teachings whatsoever. You need to be able to learn his teachings, examine them, and investigate them, to reflect on them, to independently verify them, and then practice them in order to train your mind. And this is where you see the real results. So the teachings of the Buddha is not about a bunch of beliefs and then hoping something good happens when you die. You're actually learning now, you're reflecting now to independently verify the teachings, you're practicing now to be able to integrate the teachings into your life, and now you receive the results now in this life. You can heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But you need to independently verify the teachings. You need to listen with eager ears to be able to understand what it is that the Buddha is sharing, and then independently verify it so that you have wisdom. So what I just shared with you about right view, about the mind causing its own discontent feelings, you can independently verify this. You can see that the mind's craving permanence. It's wanting things to be a certain way. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy or excited or some other pleasant feeling. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. You can look at a recent situation where you've been angry or frustrated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. You can see that there was something that your mind wanted. And if you would have gotten that thing, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, your mind was angry or sad or frustrated. And the thing is, the world is such a way that it's impermanent. Everything around you is constantly changing. So you're not going to be able to permanently get what you want. It's just not possible because you live in an impermanent world. So if you think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend, when you guys came together, you got so happy and so excited when you guys first got together. Maybe you guys were going out to the movies or dinner. Maybe you're having great conversations. You're going to the park. Maybe you had intimate contact where you're having sex with each other. So much pleasure involved. But then over time, you guys started putting expectations on each other. You wanted certain things from them. They wanted certain things from you, and you couldn't fulfill their expectations permanently, and they couldn't fulfill your expectations permanently. You guys were angry and frustrated, and you separated. And now you might have been frustrated or agitated or annoyed. You might have been missing this person. You might have been lonely and bored during this time frame. This is because the mind's holding on. It's craving permanence and wanting things to be permanent, but yet you live in an impermanent world. It's not the love that's causing you to feel that sorrow and that grief. Like when someone dies, when mom or dad or grandma and grandpa or brothers and sisters are passing away, it's not the love that's causing that sorrow. What it is it's the mind craving permanence, wanting these people to be permanent, when in reality you live in an impermanent world. Everything around you is impermanent. So as long as the mind is holding on, then it's going to experience discontent feelings. So that's why this meditation we just did is training your mind to let go, let go, let go. So if 10, 20, 30 times during the meditation, your mind had to let go, this is really helpful for your mind. This is what's going to help your mind to be able to get to this peace and this joy. So I walked people through right view, helping them understand it in detail. And you're going to need to know that in detail because there's something called the 3 universal truths and the 4 noble truths that I taught and helped students to understand. I'm also going to be teaching it on Tuesday as part of the course that I'm starting tomorrow. There's a 5-day course that I'm going to be starting tomorrow at 9 a.m. And I'm going to teach this entire path on Tuesday morning. So if you'd like to come learn, you can learn it live, or if you'd like to learn online, you can attend online or you can watch the recordings. Because right view is so essential in order to be able to get on the path to enlightenment. As long as you go around blaming other people for your feelings, you're never going to eliminate your anger or your sadness. Because with the lack of wisdom, what you'll do in your relationships, because you'll think that these anger and frustration and these painful feelings are coming from other people, is you'll push people away. I know we've all done this, right? We push people away out of our life thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you see, it didn't solve anything because you keep getting annoyed or frustrated or agitated or angry over and over and over again. So if you keep pushing people away out of your life, this isn't going to solve your problem. The other thing you'll do with this lack of wisdom is the mind will be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, maybe with your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another person, trying to get them to do things your way. And as long as you're doing that, people are going to feel uncomfortable and they're going to choose to leave out of your life. I'm sure we've all been in that situation. We've been bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, and they've chosen to leave out of our life, right? Or the third thing your mind will do with this lack of wisdom is you might put your expectations on people, and you might try to control people, try to convince them to do things your way. I'm sure you've been in arguments where you've been adamantly trying to convince somebody that what they were doing was causing you to be angry and they had to stop doing what they were doing. But this is actually your own mind that's causing these feelings. But as long as you lack this wisdom, you'll keep pushing people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile. You'll put your expectations on people, and you're not going to be able to live harmoniously with all beings. But when you establish right view, you understand that the problem is within your own mind, and the Buddha provides you the tools and techniques of how to fix this. No need to feel guilty or shameful. Anybody who's ever been born has been unenlightened. They lack the wisdom of how to get to enlightenment. But now, if you understand the problem in the solution, you can actually start implementing the solution and seeing real results. Because as long as we push people away, we're bitter, harsh, and hostile, or we put our expectations on people, we're never going to see improvement in our life. We need to change our own mind, cultivating wisdom to be able to experience change in our life. We can't change other people. It's not possible to go around and change everyone else. We can't get the entire world to do things our way because there's 8 billion people in the world. The way that you get to peacefulness is not by trying to convince other people to do things your way. It's by training your mind to not have craving, desire, attachment, wanting people to all do things exactly the same way. If you want everybody to do things your way, you can only be happy when people do things your way. And not everyone's going to do things your way because of the universal truth of impermanence. So right view is to accept responsibility and understanding that your own mind is causing these feelings. Wrong view would be to blame other people. And if you blame other people, you'll see that your problem will just continue. And then we talked about right intention. Right intention has 3 aspects. There's the intention of renunciation, where the mind's willing to let go and give up its false beliefs and false opinions. There's the intention of non-ill will, or where you have active goodwill towards all beings, this loving kindness. And you have the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. Intention of renunciation, one of the first things you need to let go of, one of the first beliefs that you need to let go of, is the belief that everyone else is causing you to be angry or frustrated or sad, right? So these beliefs that you have in your mind, you don't know whether they're true or false because you're just believing things. With belief, either someone convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself to believe it. You need to get to the point where you have wisdom. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't believe anything at all. You'll know the truth about how the world truly works. And as long as you're having anger and sadness and frustration and these other discontent feelings, the mind is struggling and having difficulties in the world because you're living in a world that you don't understand. So as long as you hold on to these false beliefs, you're going to continue to have certain struggles and difficulties in the world. So you're not bringing in new beliefs in order to get rid of your old beliefs. That's not what you're doing on the path to enlightenment. You're bringing in wisdom. And when you see this wisdom and you see the truth of true reality and you see it conflicts with your beliefs, you get rid of your beliefs and now you have wisdom to know the truth. And once you see the truth that your mind is causing these feelings, you'll never be able to be convinced otherwise. It's just like if you grew up with the idea of Santa Claus and you thought that Santa Claus existed. At one time, you might have thought Santa Claus existed and you believed this. I know when I found out at 8 years old from my sister that Santa Claus doesn't exist, man, I was crushed. I thought the whole world was coming to an end, right? That Santa Claus didn't exist. You'll get shaken up when your beliefs get triggered and you can see that your beliefs aren't true. right? So when you get rid of these beliefs and you see the truth that Santa Claus doesn't exist, it doesn't matter how many big fat men you see in a red suit or gray beard or whatever it is that they have them dressed up in, you know that that's not Santa Claus. No matter how many Christmas carols you hear about Santa Claus, you know that this isn't actually true, that there's no one in the world that goes around the whole world and delivers presents in one day, right? There's just not a person that does that, right? So when we have wisdom, nobody can ever convince us ever again that something is untrue, because we know the truth. We know that Santa Claus doesn't exist. So the same thing needs to occur with all these other things in the world, all these natural laws that the Buddha taught. You need to be able to get to the truth where you can see with 100% certainty what is true and what is the true wisdom. And then your mind becomes unshakable. Your mind becomes steady and stable, where nobody can ever shake you off of the truth. Because it doesn't matter what somebody says to you, you will never believe that Santa Claus exists. It doesn't matter. Nobody can shake you off of that. So once you see the truth and you cultivate wisdom through your own direct experience, then nobody can ever shake you off of that. So that's what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see through this Eightfold Path, is the wisdom that it takes to be able to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. And when you learn it, investigate it, and examine it, when you reflect on it to independently verify it, and then you practice it in order to train your mind, integrating this into your life, you'll get to the point where your mind's unshakable. It'll be impossible for you to ever experience anger or sadness or stress or anxiety or even the slightest displeasure. The mind is just always cheerful. It's always bright. It's always uplifted. And this is through eradicating certain pollutions in the mind that the Buddha discovered. There's certain pollutions that he discovered that he gives you the tools and the techniques of how to eradicate from the mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move in now to the moral conduct section to help you guys understand this. Because the Buddha taught this moral conduct, because as long as you're putting out harm through your speech or actions or your livelihood, this harm is going to come back to you. So once you have the wisdom that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings, now it's a matter of improving your moral conduct so you can interact in the world in a more wise way that is producing wholesome results for you. Sometimes in the unenlightened state, when we lack wisdom of right view, we might think that our anger is justified, right? If you yell or holler, you're harsh or bitter with your children or your parents or your brothers and sisters, you might think that they deserved it, right? But it's just harming you when you get to that point where you're so emotional and you're just venting your anger through your speech or your actions or something like this. So the Buddha is going to teach you how to train your mind in such a way that you're not putting out harshness and bitterness and harm, so that then it doesn't come back to you. Because any of those relationships where you're harsh and bitter and hostile, you can see that it just comes back to you. Those people treat you the same way that you treat them. But you can transform this, right? When I was growing up, me and my mom had all kinds of problems when I was growing up. And even into my early adulthood, I had all kinds of problems. I always wanted mom to change. I kept wanting her to change. I kept expecting her to change. And she never did, until I did the change first. Once I started changing and I started improving my mind and I started improving the way that I interacted with mom, then I saw a change in mom. So I sat around for many years wanting mom to change. And I thought that that was the way that I was going to get to a better relationship with her. But it's not that way. You've got to change. You've got to do the work inside your mind. Me and mom were kind of like in a log jam. And what I did is I started pulling out this anger, this hostility, this bitterness. I started pulling these logs out so everything could flow more readily. And it's through your moral conduct that's going to help you to do that. So when you're learning this moral conduct section from the Buddha, he's not teaching you rules or commandments. He's not doing that. What he's teaching you is this natural law of karma. He's teaching you this cause and effect, or action and result. Some people refer to it as karma. You might have heard that word. The word karma is a Sanskrit word from the Sanskrit language, where the original teachings of the Buddha are in Pali. So people who study the original teachings of the Buddha will tend to use this Pali word of karma. So this word karma, if it translated to just one English word, I would use that because it'd be much easier for everybody to understand. But since it doesn't translate to just one English word, I still need to use the Pali version of this word. The word karma is essentially cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. When you make choices wisely, you'll experience wholesome results. or wholesome karma. And when you make unwise decisions, you're going to experience unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. That's really all it is. It's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not a black cloud that's following you around. It's none of that kind of stuff. It's literally cause and effect. It's not even about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's essentially a sequence of events, right? So there's this sequence of events that is occurring. And when you make certain decisions, either wisely or unwisely, it's going to produce either wholesome results or wholesome karma or unwholesome results. So what the Buddha is giving you in the moral conduct section is he's showing you the natural laws of existence of how to speak in a way that is going to be harmless. And when you speak in this way, then you'll notice only wholesome results coming back to you. And when I teach you about right speech, right action, and right livelihood, he's explaining to you the natural laws. And if you understand these and you start practicing them, this is where you see the results in your life. Because as long as you're spewing harmful conduct into the world, it's just going to all come back to you. You're going to have this mess that you need to clean up. So I'm going to share with you through the original words of the Buddha, what did he teach on each one of these aspects? But that's where you don't believe what I'm sharing with you. You can learn it, you can reflect on it, and you can practice it because you've been in the world long enough that you can see what he's talking about is true. And I'll show you guys how to do this. As we go, you guys can ask any and all questions that you like. Here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl in front of the camera. If you could get a microphone, that way the people online will be able to hear you. And we'll be able to hear you here at the temple too. You can get a microphone and take it back to your seat. You just press the gray button. You'll see the lights come on, and then you just hold it up to your chin and you'll talk, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you talk here without a microphone, they wouldn't be able to hear you online. And for those of you guys that are online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that and answer your question. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask questions by just unmuting your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. Okay, so this first step that I'm going to be sharing with you, which is actually the third step of the Eightfold Path, is called right view. This is the words of the Buddha of what he taught about the natural laws of existence, about how to speak in ways that would be wise so that you don't cause harm to others, and then you'll see more and more that your relationships will improve. He says, in what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, all they had was speech, right? Nowadays, we might think about this as right communication because there's much more than just speech that we have. We have text messages, we have social media posts, we have voice messages, we have emails. We might think about this as right communication. And what the Buddha is teaching you is how to eliminate craving, desire, attachment out of your mind. Because as long as you're doing any of these things, there's still craving in your mind, and it's going to produce unwholesome results. So for example, lying. We've all lied growing up as children. We all lied to a certain degree, right? So we had a certain craving. There was something we wanted. And if we told the truth, we weren't going to get what we wanted. So we lied, right? And then people discovered our lies, and it impacted our relationships, either personally or professionally. If you've been lying as an adult, it's going to impact your professional relationships as well. People are going to not be able to trust you. People aren't going to see you as dependable. So when that great new project comes up that they need somebody to work on, and it would be really great for your career, they're not going to select you if you've been lying, right? So you need to get to the point where you're being honest and trustworthy. In this way, people can see you as being dependable and loyal. If you've done a lot of lying, then you know that your mind was probably obsessively trying to figure out, what did you say to one person versus another versus another? You have to keep all this straight. So how could you get to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy if your mind is obsessively trying to figure out what you say to one person versus another? This enlightened mental state, by the time you attain it, not only do you eliminate all your discontent feelings like that anger, sadness, frustration, and others, not only is your mind permanently peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, but you have focus and concentration and clarity and deep memory. Your personal and your professional relationships will really be blossoming. They will be at ease where you don't have bitterness and hostility hostility in your relationships anymore. You won't even have a bad mood by the time you get to enlightenment because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing the bad mood. So if we went around lying, then we're going to see that we have difficulties in our relationships and our mind is not going to be focused and concentrated. So by eliminating that and just always speaking the truth, you have nothing to worry about because you always are speaking the truth. So you would like to get to this more and more. The Buddha understood this so well that even when he told a joke, he didn't tell a lie. You might not associate a Buddha as someone who tells jokes, but enlightened beings have fun. They have way more fun than unenlightened beings because they're always cheerful. They're always happy. Their mind is always uplifted. Sometimes we see pictures of the Buddha in the meditation. We see him in all these different things. He looks so solemn and he looks so serious. But a Buddha tells jokes. They have character. They have personality, right? Their mind is uplifted and liberated and free. They're not solemn all the time, sitting around, talking all this serious stuff all the time. They're having fun. They're out there in life and enjoying themselves. So the Buddha told jokes, but he didn't lie when he told a joke. If you can imagine him being in classes and teaching people the deep wisdom of the path to enlightenment, but over here he's actually lying when he's telling jokes and talking, people wouldn't know whether to trust him and what he was saying. So even when he told jokes, he didn't tell a lie. And this requires more effort and energy from you to be able to tell jokes that are truthful, but those are usually actually more funny. Right? When you tell a really witty joke that is like really intelligent and really has a lot of wisdom in it, and it's actually the truth, this can actually be really fun, right? And we're not degrading and disparaging people in our jokes. We're telling jokes that are fun and uplifting, that are truthful. So you might decide to move your practice closer and closer to this where you're not actually lying. And then that way, you're always telling the truth and you're not lying, because if you're lying, there's something you want. And if you tell the truth, you're not going to get it. That's the craving, desire, attachment that's going to lead to your discontentedness. Then there's slander. This is like gossip. This is talk that's going to degrade somebody's reputation or talk negatively about either a person, an organization, a company, or some group of people. If you're degrading and disparaging people, what the mind is usually thinking in that situation is, if I make these people look bad, it'll make me look good. Right? This is like going into a room and people have candles and it's like, well, my candle will shine brighter if I put out everybody else's candle, right? But if you're in this dark room, all the candles being lit, it actually makes the room more bright. So let's keep everybody's candle lit, right? We don't need to put out anybody's candle. And the way that the Buddha is helping you to be able to see this is you can directly reflect on this. The Buddha doesn't teach you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And the way the world is if you go around and gossip and slander about people, you're going to run into a lot of trouble. There's people that have been beat up and even murdered over this. If you look at investigative reporters that sometimes get on the news, they might be talking and slandering and gossiping about people. Sometimes they end up dead. Remember, the Buddha's not teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And if you would like to have wholesome relationships and harmonious relationships, you'd like to get to the point where you're not slandering and gossiping anybody, right? And at the very least, if you're gossiping and slandering, when your back's turned, those people are going to gossip and slander about you. Because if you've been gossiping and slandering, those people have kind of gotten used to that. And now when you turn away, they're going to gossip and slander about you. And this is the results of your decisions coming back to you. Then there's refraining from harsh speech. What harsh speech is our tone, our tempo, and our word choice. The way that we speak really matters. If we pay attention to our tone, our tempo, and our word choice, then we'll be able to see that our relationships will really improve. We can learn to speak gentle. But when we're speaking harshly, this is because the mind has some craving, some desire. There's some longing, yearning. And the mind is not getting what it wants. So it feels like if it speaks harsh and aggressive and hostile and bitter, that it'll force these people and scare these people and fear these people into doing things my way. So when we get rid of our cravings, desires, attachments, we can learn to be more gentle in our tone, our tempo, and our word choice. Then there's frivolous speech. What this is if you or somebody you ever known have ever been around and it's just like yada, 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 a yada, 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 a yada, 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 yada. There's really no purpose or benefit from the speech. It's just like, oh my goodness, when is this person going to stop talking? It's just so much. It's not even a conversation. It's like broadcasting, right? Somebody's like broadcasting into the world, just talking and talking. There's an underlying craving there. There's a longing, yearning, a wanting to talk, right? So you would like to have conversations where you talk for a little bit and then you listen, right? And let that person talk. And then you talk for a little bit and then you listen. This is going to promote more harmonious relationships in your life. And it's going to help you get rid of any craving because you'll be able to be more influential in your relationships rather than just yada, 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 yada broadcasting, right? So this is the first level of teachings that the Buddha shares about the natural laws that would be helpful for you to produce harmonious relationships and eliminate your craving within your own mind, is eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. But then he goes deeper. He has these other teachings that plug into the Eightfold Path. He has something called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And this is what you would really like to ultimately get to. He talks about speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And this is the way you would like to train in order to be able to get to the point where all your conversations can go wonderfully. Speaking at the proper time, what this means is that you don't interrupt people. Right? If you are interrupting people, you don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you went around interrupting others, it's going to not promote harmonious relationships. And there's a craving there to talk. It's like the mind just wants to talk. You just want to jump in there. So you would like to restrain the mind and let each person talk and then talk at the proper time. The other aspect of speaking at the proper time is making sure your mind is prepared to talk. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're irritated or annoyed, it's not the proper time to talk. And you can see when you've done that, it hasn't turned out well for you because all that comes out is anger and hostility. And then the third aspect of speaking the proper time is making sure that it's the proper time for the other people to talk. If you have a friend or family member or a coworker who's angry and upset and frustrated, it's not the proper time to talk. So it's better to just refrain from talking, just talk another time. So this is the first part. This first factor of the 5 factors of well-spoken speech is speaking at the proper time, making sure that you're not interrupting, making sure that your mind is the proper time to talk, and making sure it's the proper time for the other person to talk. You might even need to check in with that person, right? Like say you got a notice in the mail that your rent is late and you guys are going to get kicked out in 3 days if you don't pay your rent, right? Well, if your life partner or your roommate comes home from work, you're not interested in jumping on them as soon as they walk through the door, like, oh my goodness, you didn't pay the rent. I didn't pay the rent. We're going to get kicked out, right? That's not what you're interested in doing. Let them come in, put their bags down, get some water, get some food, take off their shoes, relax a little bit. Hey, by the way, maybe 30 minutes, an hour into them being home. By the way, is this a good time to talk? And they may say, yeah, what do you got? Right? And it's like, oh, well, we need to pay our rent because we haven't paid it. And, we should probably take care of that. Or maybe they say, no, it's been a really hectic day at work. I can't talk now. Can we talk another time? And if you don't have a craving and a longing and a yearning to talk, you could say, yeah, let's talk tomorrow. That's fine. Right? You can just postpone it. No need to jump in there and put something on their shoulders when they just got home from work, right? So you need to pay attention to the proper time to speak. And then speaking the truth is the one we were talking about up here at the top, as well as speaking gentle. That's your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. Paying really close attention to that. Depending on what language you speak, you need to pay attention to that. English language, we used to have words like yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, things like this, or thank you, or please. These are all great ways to show that you're speaking gently and respectfully. In the Thai language, we have words that we use a lot to show respect and appreciation and all these different kinds of things to show warmth. You guys, if you're learning any Thai, you know some of those words that are in the Thai language that help you to be able to do that. Like if you hear like sawadi ka for the female or sawadi kap, that word at the end is showing politeness and respect. If you just said sawadi, It's not showing politeness and respect. So we add kap to the end for a male, or if a female is speaking, we add the ka. But there's even other variations of this. We can say sawadi na kap. We can say kapom. We can say these other higher degrees of politeness and respect as we're talking. So the Thai language has this built in, but the English language maybe not as much. So you're going to need to be creative and look at whatever language it is that you speak, whether it's English or any other language, and be warm and gentle and polite through your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. Then you would like to be sure you're speaking beneficially. What this means is that you're clear and you're concise, that you're precise, that you're purposeful when you're speaking. That if you were just yada, 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 random chit chat, jumping around all over the place, people aren't going to be able to understand what you're communicating, and they're not going to be able to benefit from what it is that you're sharing. So you'd like to speak purposeful, clear, and concise when you're speaking. Then there's speaking with a mind of loving kindness. This is the opposite of inner hate. If you had inner hate and you started speaking through that, it's not going to produce wholesome results. But what loving kindness is this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. If you can have this active goodwill towards others when you're speaking, then this will help to kind of round out your speech, that you're speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, it's gentle, it's beneficial, and now it's with this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, this warmth and this love, this kindness for others, right? That's how you would like to speak in order to get to the point where all your conversations are going well. What we're talking about here is something in the Thai language that we refer to as barami. You can establish barami. What the word barami means in Thai is it means the one who people listen to. The one who people listen to, barami. You can establish barami, the one who people listen to, where you can be very influential in your community, whether it's in your family life or your community of your neighborhood or your professional life. You can be very influential and helpful to those people. But you need to have barami. You need to be the one who people listen to. And the way that you establish that is through speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Here in Thailand, if you live in a village, there's typically some village elders that everybody knows they have barami. You have a problem, you go speak to the village elders and they'll be able to help you. And they're really successful in life. And when I say successful, I don't mean financially successful. What I mean is they're successful in their relationships. They have really good relationships throughout the community, and everybody knows that. So if you need help, you go speak with the village elders, and now they're going to help you because they have barami. So if you'd like to be helpful in your community, you're going to need to speak in ways that people can see that this person doesn't harm others. And now people are going to consider you to be the one who people listen to. You'll have barami. It's going to take you 6 months, a year, 2 years to be able to develop this, but slowly but surely you can develop it. So this is the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And as I mentioned, you don't believe any of these teachings. You need to be able to learn, reflect, and practice. So far, I've helped you with the learning. Okay, the examination, the investigation. But now start reflecting on this. Take a recent conversation that didn't go so well in your life. Look at these 5 factors. There were certain factors you weren't practicing, or the other person wasn't practicing, and the conversation didn't go well. Either you didn't speak at the right time, you weren't speaking the truth, you weren't speaking gentle, you weren't speaking beneficially, or you weren't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. And this is why the conversation didn't go well, right? So you can independently verify and you can see like, wow, you might have missed one of these or 2 or 3. You might have missed all of them. But even if you missed just one of them, there's the potential for the conversation to not go well. So you can independently reflect and you can see like, wow, the Buddha is teaching the truth here, right? Or you can also take the other side, because you've had conversations that have gone really well, right? Where they've gone wonderfully. And you can look at those conversations and you can see you and the other person was practicing all 5 of these factors, because this natural law, it affects you whether you're aware of it or not. And when you weren't aware of these 5 factors and you were actually practicing them, you can see the conversation went wonderfully. But at that time, you weren't aware of the 5 factors. So you were just kind of like practicing them without necessarily realizing it. But now that you know what the 5 factors are, you can consciously start practicing them. intentionally start practicing them. And this is where you'll start seeing the improvements to your life. So if you've done the learning, and you might need to do some more learning, that's where the books come in and all the other classes, courses, retreats, and talking to your teacher. You might need to do some more learning and investigation on these. You might need to do some reflection on these to verify that they're true. But then when you start practicing them and integrating them into your life, that's where you're going to see the real results. Your relationships are all going to change. They're all going to improve because you're functioning differently. As long as you continue to be bitter, harsh, and hostile, it's not going to promote harmonious relationships. But when you change and you transform your mind like this, that's where you can clear out all the problems in your relationships. And over time, people will just be loving and kind to you, right? 99.999% of the time, you can get to the point where everybody's being loving and kind to you, right? You shouldn't be practicing these because you want something from someone else. Just do it because it's wise and you know it's a wise thing to do. And now you'll gradually see the improvement in your life. Okay, so this is called right speech, or we might think about this as right communication. Because if you're angry and you run over to your keyboard and you start pounding on an email, it's not the proper time to talk, right? It's not the proper time to communicate. Or say you went into a job interview and you knocked it out of the park, right? And you did really, really good in this job interview, but they got on your social media and they saw that you were bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive in your social media. You're probably not going to get the job, right? So you like all your communication to be using these 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And this is what will help you in your relationships. In the book, I have a lot of details about speech. This is just a little bit of it, but I go into a lot of detail because we can cause a lot of harm through our communication. And this is where harm will come back to you. And you're going to need to be able to study it and learn it and then gradually implement it. You're not going to be able to snap your fingers and go out of here and start practicing this perfectly. You're going to need to gradually train your mind. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And as you're dialing this in closer and closer, and you're looking at the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and trying to work on those day by day, there might be some times where you kind of forget what the 5 factors are. And that's what I give here is I say, if you can remember to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this will be very helpful for you, right? Of course, you need to know the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. That's what's going to ultimately help you the most. But if you have a complete blank and you're like in the middle of a business meeting and you can't remember what the 5 factors of well-spoken speech are, try to remember this: polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. And this will help you. But ultimately, you're going to need to know the 5 factors in order to transform the mind completely. So do you guys have any questions on right communication or right speech? Anything you guys would like to ask me here at the temple? Again, if you guys could use the microphones, and online you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom. Any questions? Okay, it looks like we have a question coming in here online. Let's see. Let me take the mic off so I can see. Okay, this is coming in from Chris. How to build discernment about what's truly beneficial communication. So discernment is wise decision making, and how you build that through beneficial is you would like to speak clear, concise, and precise. It's not necessarily about the topic that you're talking about. It's the method of communicating. So you would like to be clear, concise, and precise in your communication. Chris is also asking, any thoughts on how beneficial right speech plays out in social media context where communication is often broadcasted rather than directed? It's the same thing. When you're in social media, you would like to use all of those 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Another thing that you can pay attention to with things like social media is when people are being bitter, harsh, and hostile on your social media, just delete the comment. No reason to reply back to it, right? Because it's just going to keep the argument going. If someone picks up the hostility and anger, it's like a rubber ball, and they throw it around the room. If you pick it up and throw it around the room, and they pick it up and throw it around the room, next thing you know, you got all kinds of arguing on your social media. If you look at my social media, there's no derogatory comments or people being angry and bitter and harsh whatsoever. Because whenever that happens, I just delete it, and those people go away. Or they get angry and they block me. Excellent. right? No need to come around if you're going to be bitter and harsh and hostile. See you later. Bye-bye, right? Now, if you'd like to come around and learn how to not be bitter and harsh and hostile, okay, come around. I'll teach you how to do that. But if you just are interested in being bitter, harsh, and hostile, okay, see you later. Bye-bye, right? So you can delete those comments. And then also on social media, it's wise to only talk in situations where people are asking you questions, right? If people are asking you a question, then you reply, right? Sometimes when you see something on social media, if you disagree with it, you might feel like you got to jump in there and tell them what's right, right? This is the ego coming up. The ego, the arrogance, putting yourself above people or below people. You don't have to go around and teach people everything you know. So if somebody's saying something you disagree with, just keep scrolling. Right? Just keep scrolling. Now, if they're asking a question and they'd like to know information, okay, they're open to information. You share your thoughts with them in a polite, kind, friendly, and respectful way using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But if they haven't asked you any questions, no need to tell them what it is that you know because they haven't asked. Because now your ego and their ego are going to clash and you're just going to have one big argument. That's all that's going to be, right? Okay. So let me see if we have anything else. Did I see someone pick up a microphone? Did someone? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sometimes when you want to speak your truth, you might hurt another person. So how are we treating this situation?
It's not possible for you to hurt somebody else through your speech because if somebody, let's just say you were rude and impolite, which I don't recommend, but let's just say you were. If somebody got angry because of that, that's because their mind's craving for you to be polite, right? So not everyone in the world's going to be polite. What I'm teaching you to do is how to be polite and respectful in your conversations. And that's where you'll have the less opportunity to be able for them to become angry or agitated. But if someone's being angry or frustrated or any discontent feelings, it's their own craving in their mind. Right? So there's nothing you could say to me that's going to make me angry or frustrated or agitated. It's just humanly impossible for me to experience that based on the training of the mind. So it's not somebody else. It's not something external that's causing these feelings to occur. So you would like to speak in a way that is using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And what you'll find is that in 99.999999% of the time, people won't get upset, people won't get angry. But there's going to be that very rare situation where someone has some kind of trigger. There was a situation here a couple of months ago where somebody asked me about the war and how to deal with their feelings and emotions because of the wars in the world. And I was talking about this, about how to train your mind and how to get to a point where you can have peacefulness even though there's a war in the world. And one of the things I mentioned was it's unfortunate that there's wars in the world. And there was this one person who was just angry that I said, it's unfortunate. She thought that I should be angry and I should be frustrated and I should be agitated, but I wasn't because I don't get angry because of what's going on in the world. But in her mind, she thought that that was wrong, that I shouldn't have said that. Her mind was causing that anger herself. So even though I'm speaking the 5 factors of well-spoken speech all the time, someone's mind can still get triggered with something as simple as saying, it's unfortunate that there's wars in the world, but here's the way to deal with it, right? I was just kind of guiding people of how to do it. So if you speak with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, 99.9% of the time, people won't experience any anger or frustration around you because you're not triggering any of their cravings. But if their cravings do get triggered, like in that situation, it's their mind that's causing that. It's not you. Mm-hmm. Okay. Have some more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. So I get it from the point of view of from one's own self, it's good not to lie, it's good not to slander, to adopt right speech. I understand if you're on the receiving end directly of somebody who is maybe lying or slandering, that's okay because you can simply choose how you react yourself and not become irritated by that. Mm-hmm. Where you're in a situation where somebody who you love is on the receiving end of lying and slander, setting, how can you then help that situation, which is one step removed? So either helping it in the sense of helping helping the person on the receiving end of it, or helping the cause of that, the person who is choosing to lie or slander about that individual. So taking it from a direct situation to a slightly indirect situation.
Sure. So the problem here is in both of those individuals' minds, that the person who's doing the lying and slandering, they're having craving, desire, attachment in their mind. And the person over here who's getting upset, they're having craving, desire, attachment in the mind. And the only way for them to get better is they have to let go. They have to train their mind to eliminate their craving, desire, attachment, and see the lack of wisdom that they have. They need to train their own mind. So in your position, you actually can't fix them. They have to learn to fix themselves. But if they ask you for help, or if you offer, you say, hey, I see you're upset. Would you like something to be able to help you? And they're either going to say, yes, what do you got? Or they're going to say, no, I'm not interested. And you just need to accept that, whatever they say, because you can't fix their mind. They have to choose to do the work for themselves. And as long as you don't have craving for these two people to be a certain way, you'll be completely peaceful. So if they say, yes, what's your idea? Or they say, no, I'm not interested in your thoughts, you can maintain your contentedness and maintain your peace. But if you're craving, if you're longing, yearning, and wanting to see something specific from these people, if you're not getting what you want, you'll be angry and frustrated in that situation. So in some situations, people say, yes, what's your idea? And you'll share it with them, and they'll go off and implement that and have great success potentially. Or in some cases, they'll say yes, you'll start sharing with them, and their ego will pop up and they won't even be interested in what you have to say. Or they'll say yes, and you'll start sharing with them, and they'll go do something completely opposite of what you say. And you need to be okay with all of those scenarios, because if you're sharing with them, this is your generosity. You don't have any expectation of anything in return. Even them saying thank you or following what it is that you suggested, that you shouldn't be sharing with the contingency or the expectation that they will do what you say. And then if you offer help, it's important that you're prepared for a no. That they may say, no, I'm not interested in your help. And that doesn't mean they don't respect you. That doesn't mean they don't care about you. That doesn't mean they don't, have a great relationship with you. It's just in that situation, they're just not interested in hearing what you have to say. And they're going to go out and try to figure it out on their own. And they might figure it out. They might cultivate some wisdom, and they might not. They might stumble over their feet for a while. But either way, that's their choice. And you need to be comfortable with that rather than trying to force or control them to do what it is that you have in your mind that you think would be good for them. So they have to work on their own issues in their own mind. You can just be a support and a guide, offer that help, but only give that help if they actually are open to it. Because if you went in there and gave unsolicited guidance, that would be your own ego that's doing that, and you're not interested in doing that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. Maybe if you could turn off that mic just so we don't get any feedback on it. All right, you're welcome, Chris. Pleased to help you. All right, so now we're going to move into the next one, which is right action. Here, the words of the Buddha are, in what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So here the Buddha is giving you 3 impactful actions. He's not giving you a complete list of things, because that would be impossible for him to give you every single thing that would be unwise to do with your bodily actions. Essentially what he's teaching you is to not cause harm through your bodily actions. As long as you're causing harm through your bodily actions, harm is going to come back to you. So he's talking about 3 impactful ones here, but he goes into detail about these in the 5 precepts. This is something that I'm going to teach in other programs, and I teach in this program when we get to chapter 7, but I'm going to teach it this Wednesday. I'll teach the 5 precepts, where it gives you a lot of explanation on these 5, because it's not as simple as what he's explaining here. This is just a teaching that is kind of pointing to another teaching, because you see, like here it says like sexual misconduct. Someone might say, well, what is that? Right? Well, the Buddha explains it in the 5 precepts, and he goes in a lot of detail about it. He talks about having sex with minors. He talks about having sex outside of your existing relationships, things like this, sex without consent, because these are all harmful things, right? It's important to note that the Buddha never talked about same-gender relationships as being sexual misconduct. And the reason why is because there's no harm. If there's 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults that are choosing to have sex with each other, then they're not harming anyone. right? Nowadays, not everybody understands that. And it's important to be able to understand that if there's a male and a female, or a male and female, they're not actually harming anybody. They're loyal, loving, consenting adults. So if you prefer same gender relationships, or you know someone who does, you're not causing any harm to anybody. But in the world, there's some people that have this craving. They want every man to have sex with a woman, and they want every woman to have sex with a man. But that would be permanence. We understand the universal truth of impermanence, that not every woman's going to be interested in having sex with a man, and not every man's going to be interested in having sex with a woman. That would be permanence. But we understand the world is impermanent. So ever since the beginning of time, there's been same-gender relationships, that men have been having sex with men and women have been having sex with women ever since the beginning of the time. Even the Buddha talks about this in his teachings, essentially, 2,500 years ago. He was aware of this, but he didn't put it in his teachings because he knows that those individuals aren't causing any harm, right? So this is something that we usually explore more deeply when we get into the 5 precepts, but I just like to give you a heads up on this, that if you see this sexual misconduct, it doesn't include same-gender relationships. And this is how wise the Buddha was, that 2,500 years ago, he understood this, right? We have people today, a large number of people that don't understand this even today, but he understood it 2,500 years ago. That's how wise he was. He understood the natural law of karma. So he's not giving you a complete list here. He's just giving you 3 things, right? He's not saying don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, right? But we know, if we know right action, it would be unwise to walk up to someone and punch them in the face, because they're probably going to punch you back, or they're going to pull out a knife or a gun, or their friends or their family is going to attack you, or something's going to happen. It's not going to produce wholesome results in your life. You're not going to get wholesome karma by punching someone in the face. There's going to be unwholesome karma. There's going to be unwholesome results. So this isn't an exhaustive list. He also doesn't say don't drag your suitcase down the aisle of a plane and run over people's feet and bump into their knees, right? Because planes didn't even exist 2,500 years ago. So there's no way that he could ever give you a comprehensive list. But we know when we get on airplanes, we try to walk through the aisle and not bump into people. We try to be aware of our bags and putting them away. And if we happen to bump into someone, oh, I'm so sorry, I apologize, right? We apologize to this person, right? This is the way to keep our karma clean, right? So you would like to look at how you use your body in space, and that you're not harming anybody through your bodily actions, right? So that's what the Buddha is essentially teaching here. There's a litany of things that you could do, but you can use your own wisdom to figure these things out, to make sure that you're not causing harm. You could do all kinds of different things that could potentially cause harm. The Buddha is just giving you 3 very impactful ones: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And then he goes into more detail about this in the 5 precepts. Okay, so in the book, I have some more things that the Buddha has. He has about having substances that cause heedlessness. He talks about gambling. These things all will cause you harm. So he talks about these in different parts of his teachings. But there's a whole litany of things that you could look at here to ensure that you're not causing harm to others through your bodily actions. Then he talks about right livelihood. What a livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. And if you cause harm through your livelihood, this is going to have harmful consequences for you, or unwholesome karma. So the Buddha provides you these 2 levels of purification of your livelihood. So if you're in between jobs right now, or if you're in a job that you don't particularly care for, this is going to be guidance to help you find that particular livelihood that will be actually producing wholesome benefits for your wholesome results. The first part, he talks about ensuring that you're not having a livelihood that is causing harm through any of these 5 things, right? Where it's business in weapons, business in living beings, business in meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and business in poisons. If you have business in any of these kinds of things, it's causing harm to others, so harm can come back to you. Right? And remember, nothing in the teachings of the Buddha is about belief. You would like to independently verify this. So you can take each one of these and independently verify it. Take something like substances that cause heedlessness. If I stood on the street corner and I stole crystal methamphetamine or heroin into my neighborhood, I'm causing harm to the community. These people are getting addicted to the substances that I'm selling. And now they're going out and stealing and robbing, and now they're bringing that money to me. And because of that, I can very easily get beat up. I can get murdered. I can get arrested. I can get addicted to these substances myself. This is all the harm that's coming to me based on my decision to cause harm in the world by standing on the street corner and selling illicit drugs into the community. And in most places in the world, this is illegal. But the natural law of karma isn't functioning based on the human laws. The human laws that we create, while we should always aspire for them to be fair and equitable and applied equally to all people, because human beings are involved, they're never going to be that. They're never going to be fair and equitable for everybody, even though we should always aspire for that. But because humans are involved and we're prone to errors, people are going to make mistakes. So this natural law of karma, it's functioning at a much higher level than what the governments create. A government creates certain laws, but they're typically not always fair and equitable for all beings, even though we should continue to aspire to get closer and closer to that. An example that I'll share with you is this one on substances that cause heedlessness. The one that I just shared about being on the street corner, you guys can relate to that. It's like, yeah, understand. But also, if I was to say take a job at a liquor store in my community, the government's not going to arrest me for that. The government's like, yeah, you can go be a cashier at the liquor store. Go for it. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to arrest you. Go be a cashier. But if you understand the natural law of karma, you would realize that that could be very unwise, because working at a liquor store, they're very likely to get robbed, beat up, and murdered at that liquor store. And it would be unwise for you to work in that situation. At the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele from time to time that are coming in there, right? So now how can you get to a peaceful and joyful life if you have this issue going on with your livelihood? So this natural law is a much higher law than the human laws. And if you're practicing the natural law of karma, you'll never have to worry about your government ever, because you're going to be practicing a law that is much higher than the laws that they're creating. So this is the first part of what the Buddha is teaching about livelihood, that it would be wise to not perform any of these particular livelihoods. And you can go through and independently verify each one of these and see how it would lead to harm in the world, and harm would come back to you. But then he has details about how to perform your livelihood so that you can be successful in your day-to-day livelihood. He talks about scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. Scheming is things like being corrupt, right? Like if I was a politician and I was 10 or 15 years into my career and I was being corrupt the entire time, and now they find out 10 or 15 years down the road, I'm probably not going to get reelected. And now the livelihood that I've created, I'm not going to be able to support myself, right? I'm going to have difficulties getting my basic necessities like food, clothing, shelter, and medical care, right? So it would be unwise to scheme. This isn't about the type of livelihood. This is about how you perform your livelihood, right? So you could have like a livelihood like a politician or a police officer, which is a fine livelihood. It's not one of those 5, but if you are scheming, it's going to cause difficulties in your life. What flattery is this is like insincere comments just to get people to buy things from you. If you've ever been into a store where you walked in, and as soon as you walked in, they're like, oh, you are so beautiful. Those earrings look so great on you. Oh, that looks so wonderful. I have exactly the purse that's going to match with those earrings. You've got to see this purse over here, right? Or, some variation of this. Sometimes people are very insincere in the way that they're talking to you. And when you've probably experienced that, you're kind of like, I'm not interested in buying from these people, right? So if you were like that in your livelihood, if you were just flattering your business partners or your customers or people like this, they're not going to be interested in continuing to do business with you. So flattery would be unwise. Hinting is being unclear in your work projects. Like say if we were all on a project team and we needed to go brief the boss, we would like to be clear and concise in the way that we're briefing the boss so that they could understand the project that we're working on and where we're at, what the status of the project is. So you'd like to be clear and concise in your communication within your livelihood. Then there's belittling. Belittling would be like being degrading or diminishing or disparaging to your customers, to your coworkers, to your business partners, or even your competition. If you're belittling your competition to your customers, they're going to know that and they're going to see that, and they're not going to be interested in being involved with you in business. So if you're looking to create a real successful livelihood, the Buddha is guiding you to not belittle individuals within your livelihood. And then what pursuing gain with gain is this is like just taking a job for the money. and that's all you care about is the money. If you've ever had that kind of job, or you just showed up for your paycheck and that's all you really cared about, you didn't care about the product or the service, you didn't really have any motivation or enthusiasm or ambition in this job, you probably dragged yourself to work each day. You probably felt miserable going to work each day. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is create this ideal life for yourself where you can have nothing but peacefulness and joy all throughout your day. So if 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours a day, you go to a place that's absolutely miserable and you can't stand being there, you're not going to be able to get to the peacefulness and the joy. So the Buddha is teaching you to don't just take a job for the money, that you should have this interest and ambition and enthusiasm about the work that you're doing, that it can feel purposeful for you. And now you can create a life for yourself that is meaningful and that you really have ambition towards. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you in the Right Livelihood, is ultimately to get to this point where it doesn't even feel like work anymore. Right? You can actually have a livelihood where even if they didn't pay you, you'd probably still do that work because you enjoy it so much. Right? And if you're in that livelihood, wonderful. But if you're not, the Buddha has teachings to be able to help guide you to that point. This, what I've described so far, is called the first fold of purification. These things that I'm sharing so far. There's a second fold of purification. And if, like I mentioned, if you're either in between jobs, if you're looking for a new job, if you're in a job that you don't like, you might look at volume 12, chapter 14 of our book series. Volume 12, Chapter 14 of our book series, it's over there on the shelf, or you can download it for free from our website. It's going to give you the full exhaustive teachings on right livelihood and how to move to a livelihood that you feel enthused and you have ambition and motivation. And each day you can go to work and actually enjoy what it is that you're doing each individual day. And that's where you would feel wonderful. This word work, it is a 4-letter word, but it doesn't have to be derogatory. It doesn't have to be painful to go to work. You can actually thoroughly enjoy what it is that you do. And you might see that example here in Thailand. You can see someone on the street corner selling mango and sticky rice, and they're just so pleased to cut up that mango and put that sticky rice together and present it to their customers for 40 baht or 50 baht or whatever it is. And they're just so enthused about providing that mango and sticky rice, and they thoroughly enjoy it. So you're going to need to find your mango and sticky rice. What's your mango and sticky rice? What is that thing that you just thoroughly enjoy that you could just do for 40 baht potentially, right? And you just would enjoy it. Not that you have to charge 40 baht, right? You can make whatever money that you like. Enlightened beings can actually be rich. It's okay, right? But you would like to do something that it's not just about the money, that it's something that you thoroughly enjoy. So figure out, what is your mango and sticky rice? Okay? So this is right livelihood. So just to kind of summarize this, and then I'll open up for questions about anything you guys would like to talk about, whether it's anything here or anything else, is right speech. This is to not cause harm through any of your verbal conduct, but also understanding that there's all these other methods of communication, and that we like to communicate in ways that is harmless, that we communicate verbally through text, chat, post, emails. All of this should be harmless. Then ensuring that our bodily actions are not harmful through the way that we interact in the world with our body, ensuring that there's no harm. And then our livelihood, ensuring that we select a way to sustain our life that doesn't cause harm to other beings. Because if you do, that harm is just going to come back to you. Something that the Buddha teaches around moral conduct, he says, whenever you're doing an action, whether it's verbal, bodily, or mental, that you should reflect before you do that thing. Is this going to cause harm to others? Is it going to cause harm to me? Or is it going to cause harm to both? And if any of those statements are true, he says you shouldn't do that thing. If you're doing something while you're actually doing it, he says you should be reflecting. Is what I'm currently doing causing harm to others, to me, or is it causing harm to both? And if any of those statements are true, he says you should stop doing that immediately. If there's something that you've already done and you reflect back on it and you look at it and it either caused harm to others, caused harm to you, or caused harm to both, the Buddha says you should not do these things in the future. Because any time that you cause harm to others, to yourself, or to both, then this is going to just keep you experiencing unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. So this is the way you can reflect before doing something, while doing something and after having done something? Is it causing harm to others? Is it causing harm to me? Or is it causing harm to both? And if you're causing any harm, that harm is going to be experienced by you because you're putting out harm. So you'd like to eliminate any kind of harm through your moral conduct. And that's what's going to get you to the point where you're experiencing only wholesome results. And you're going to need the mental discipline of the Eightfold Path in order to be able to get to this. This is what I'm going to teach next week. You're going to need to know right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. All of these steps are actually working together in tandem. You don't master one before you move on to the others. You actually are dialing all of these in at the same time. If you think about a speaker system and you have 8 dials, you would like to dial each one of these dials in and purify your mind more and more closely. Just like the speaker system, you're trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. You would like to dial these speakers in really nice and tweak in each individual dial. It's the same thing that you're doing with these 8 dials too. You're getting a better and better performing mind to be able to function. So you wouldn't be able to practice this moral conduct if you didn't have the wisdom and you didn't have the mental discipline. So this moral conduct is just helping you to stop the pipe from spewing water all over the place, right? So you can stop that spewing of harmful conduct into the world so that now you can kind of clean up the mess that we made because we lacked wisdom about how to interact in the world. So do you guys have any questions on any of these things that I've been talking about? Remember, you can ask questions here with the mics, or online. You can do that through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Anything you guys would like to ask about? Okay, I see someone there on YouTube just saying thank you. You're welcome. Pleased to help you. Okay, looks like we have a question coming in on Zoom. Let's see. This is from Janae. And Janae's asking, with pursuing gain with gain, what happens if there are no jobs that you enjoy, but you really need to sustain your life? So in these situations, you might need to do something else for a while you're sorting out your right livelihood. It's not that you just snap your fingers and instantly start practicing all these things. So you might need to be doing one particular livelihood to be able to make sure you have the basic necessities to sustain your life. But all the while, you might be looking to build skills or build contacts, kind of looking for ways to move into a different livelihood. And then once you find that, you bring your current livelihood down, and then you gradually build up into your new livelihood. And now you're off in having purified your livelihood. So those are the kinds of things that you do. You just gradually move the mind in the direction of a new livelihood. And in the meantime, do what you need to do in order to sustain your life, but be sure that you're not causing harm. At least don't do any of these things that we're talking about here, but you might actually still be pursuing gain with gain, right? You might still be just working in order to get money, but at least you're not doing any of these other things, that you don't really thoroughly enjoy the work, but you're doing it just until you can figure out how to get to that next thing that you can do. And then eventually you'll be able to get rid of this part of it where you're not pursuing gain with gain, and then your livelihood will be more purified. And we have a question here from Chris. How can one know the true balance of benefits and harms that ripple outwards from livelihood? Given the high complexity of modern economies, action could seem beneficial from a narrow vantage point, but harmful from a different vantage point. For example, a farmer may be using fertilizer and pesticides to give more food to benefit his family and community, but the side effects of those technologies may create greater harm to beings that's beyond their line of sight. That's the lack of wisdom, Chris, and the craving there. As long as there's longing and yearning and there's a lack of wisdom, because you saw in the livelihood that the Buddha is talking about, he's saying business and poisons, right? Whenever we sell poisons or whenever we use poisons, this is going to cause harm because poisons are meant to kill other beings. So with a lack of wisdom, an individual will make unwise decisions and it's going to produce unwholesome results. But slowly but surely, as someone arises more and more wisdom, we make wiser decisions and we experience more wholesome results. And this is the reason why we see so many problems in certain parts of the world. We see all kinds of problems problems all throughout the world. This is all from a lack of wisdom of individuals not understanding the natural laws. And when you understand the natural laws and more people start making wiser and wiser decisions in the world, we can get to a point where we've essentially created heaven on earth. That's what we can do, that more and more individuals making wise decisions, we can have peace and joy. We can get rid of murders and rapes and racism and degrading people and being bitter and harsh and hostile to people. We can just love all beings. But it takes each individual choosing to cultivate wisdom. So in a situation where someone hasn't chosen to cultivate wisdom, they're going to experience the results of that. So like a farmer using pesticides, they're polluting their own land. And now the value of the land is going to go down. They're also polluting their water. So they're probably drinking some of that stuff. They're also around that pesticide and they're eating that stuff. And that's all affecting the health of their body. So they're experiencing the direct results of their unwise decisions. Okay. All right. So I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. I don't see any questions here either. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for the questions that you guys asked. Thank you for your interest to learn the teachings of the Buddha, because as more and more people choose to learn and practice these teachings, the world's just going to become a more peaceful and loving place. It's going to help you by you learning and practicing. Your mind's going to be more peaceful. The people around you are going to not have to deal with the harm that you were potentially causing in the past, and all of humanity is going to benefit from this. So I really admire people who come to the temple and choose to do this inner work, because it's really easy to show up to a building and have some water sprinkled on you, believe a bunch of things, and you go back out and start continuing to cause harm in the world. But it's a lot more challenging to come to a place like this, learn some wisdom, and then actually go out there and transform your mind and transform your life. That's a lot more challenging. So I admire people who do that work. So it might be a lot easier to show up to a building and believe a bunch of stuff, but it's a lot harder later because they don't have the wisdom of how to lead their life. But when you come to a place like this, it's more challenging up front to understand and practice these teachings, but overall, you're working toward a much more peaceful and joyful life. So learning and practicing these teachings, it's the best thing you could do for yourself, for those close to you, and for all of humanity. Just everybody's going to benefit from you choosing to become more wise and function in a more and more harmless way in the world. So thank you for your dedication and interest to learning and practicing these teachings. If you'd like to learn more, as I mentioned, Sundays and Wednesdays, I teach this group learning program from here, and I live stream it as well. Tomorrow, I'm going to be starting a course, Monday through Friday. It's called Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment, and you can come to any portion of this course that you like. You can come the full 5 days if you like, where I'm going to be teaching here for 4 days. And then on the 5th day, I'm taking students out for a field trip to visit some other temples. We're going to visit a forest temple. We're going to visit a temple up on the mountain, and we're going to have some lunch at a Hill Tribe restaurant. So you guys could come just for the tour if you like, or you could come for 1 or 2 or 3 days. You could come just for the morning of any of these sessions. It's really up to you. Of course, the students who attend the entire program, they're going to learn a lot more. They're going to benefit a lot more. But sometimes people's flight is leaving on Wednesday. They can only come on Monday and Tuesday. So if that's the case, feel free to come for as much or as little of that course as you like. It's from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day here, and it's available to you at no cost. So you're welcome to just show up tomorrow if you like. And there's more details about this on our website. You can see it. It's called The Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment. Or if you'd like to come talk to me after class, I can help you understand more about it. But that's a really good place for somebody to get started on the path to enlightenment. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.